I never expected to run into Christine Wagner or Bella Luna, especially not on Emily's birthday. The crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow across the white tablecloths. My daughter sat across from me, her dark hair neatly braided just like her mother used to wear hers. She was examining the menu with an adorably serious expression, her brow forward in concentration.
"What about the fettuccine alfredo, Dad?"
Emily asked, looking up at me with Sarah's eyes.
"Mom always said it was your favorite."
My heart clenched at the mention of Sarah, but I managed to smile. "That's right, Princess. Your mom and I had a first date here, you know."
"Really? Tell me about it again."
Before I could begin the familiar story, a sharp laugh cut through the restaurant's gentle murmur.
"Well, if it isn't Thomas Anderson, I almost didn't recognize you without your ratty backpack."
I turned to see Christine Wagner standing by her table, looking exactly like the kind of person who belonged in a place like this. Her designer suit probably cost more than my monthly salary, and her perfectly manicured nails gleamed as she gestures dismissively at us.
"So that's your kid?"
Christine's eyes narrowed as she looked at Emily.
"I guess dropouts really do have ugly children."
My hands clenched into fists under the table. 20 years had passed since high school, but Christine's words still had the power to make my blood boil. Back then, I'd been forced to drop out to support my sick mother, but Christine and her wealthy friends had turned me into their favorite target. Now she was aiming her cruelty at my daughter. Emily tilted her head, regarding Christine with an unnervingly calm expression.
"Hey, Dad,"
she said with a weary sigh.
"Should we just get this old lady fired?"
Christine's laughter faltered.
"What? Dropout kids really are stupid. What nonsense are you spouting? A little brat like you getting me fired?"
The few nearby diners were beginning to stare, but Christine seemed beyond caring. Her perfectly composed facade cracked further as she leaned towards Emily.
"This is why ignorant trash is so troublesome. Listen here. People like you and people like me live in different worlds. Parallel lines that never cross, get it? Maybe I should teach that smart mouth of yours a lesson."
As Christine's hand shot out towards my daughter, I started to rise. But before I could intervene, a commanding voice rang out.
"Miss Wagner, what exactly do you think you're doing?"
Christine froze. Her face draining of color, she turned to face an elderly man in an immaculate suit. I recognized him immediately from the business magazines Sarah used to read. Jonathan Chen, CEO of the corporation where Christine worked.
"Mr. Chen, I was just
about to assault a child in my favorite restaurant?"
His voice was quiet but carried an unmistakable edge of steel.
"A child who happens to be the daughter of Thomas Anderson, whose wife Sarah is one of our most brilliant software engineers before her passing."
Christine's eyes widened in horror as Mr. Chen continued.
"Sarah spoke often of her wonderful family, her husband who sacrificed his education to care for his dying mother, who worked 3 jobs to put himself through coding boot camp, who supported her through her illness while raising their daughter. Tell me, Miss Wagner, what exactly about that story strikes you as trash?"
I felt Emily's small hand slip into mine under the table as we watched Christine struggle to respond.
"Sir, I had no idea. I mean, I didn't..."
"Clear out your office tomorrow morning. Your services will no longer be required at Chen Technologies."
As Christine fled the restaurant in tears, Mr. Chen turned to us with a gentle smile.
"I apologize for the disruption to your evening. Sarah is not just an employee, but a dear friend. Please, enjoy your meal. It's on me."
He pressed a business card into my hand.
"And Thomas, we're always looking for talented developers who understand the value of hard work and family. Give me a call when you're ready for a change."
After he left, Emily and I sat in stunned silence for a moment. Then she grinned.
"See? I told you we could get her fired."
I couldn't help but laugh. "You're too smart for your own good, just like your mother." Later that evening, as we walked home under a sky full of stars, Emily grew quiet.
"You know, Dad, if you hadn't dropped out of school, maybe your life would have been different."
I looked down at my daughter, her face illuminated by the street lamps, and saw the worry in her expression.
"Do you regret the life we have now?"
Her eyes filled with tears, and I knelt down to pull her into a tight hug. Sarah had taught me what truly mattered in life, cherishing the people right in front of you, facing each day with joy, never letting your family worry. Those lessons that carry us through her illness and beyond. Listen, Emily, if anyone interviews me someday, no matter who in the world asks me, I know exactly what I'll say. I pulled back to look her in her eyes, smiling. Even if there was a turning point where I could choose my path again, I'd choose to be a high school dropout without hesitation. Because I know that path leads straight to meeting your mother and having you. Emily buried her face on my shoulder, and I held her close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. Sarah would have been so proud of our girl, so fierce in defending her family, so quick to stand up to bullies. Looking back now, even those long years of bullying seemed like nothing more than a prologue, leading me to the family I cherished above all else. The stars twinkled overhead as we walked home together, and I knew in my heart that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, guided by Sarah's love and wisdom. Sometimes the hardest path will lead us exactly where we need to be. The memory of that night at Bella Luna stayed with me, but also stirred up older memories when I hadn't shared with Emily yet. As we settled into our evening routine the next day, Emily curled up on our worn but comfortable couch with her math homework spread across her lap.
Dad?
She asked, tapping her pencil against her textbook.
How did you and Mom really meet?
I set down the dishes I was drying and joined her on the couch. You know, after what happened yesterday, maybe it's time I told you the whole story. Emily's eyes lit up as she pushed aside her homework. I couldn't help but smile. She had Sarah's insatiable curiosity. It started about a year after I dropped out, I began. I was working 3 jobs, morning shift at a diner, afternoon at a warehouse, and night security at a tech company. That's where I first saw your mom, but she wasn't just any employee there. The memory was so vivid. Sarah hunched over her keyboard at 2 a.m., her face illuminated by multiple monitors, dark hair falling out of its messy bun. I noticed her staying late several nights in a row. She was the youngest lead developer in the company's history, I continued. Everyone expected her to become the next CEO, but that night, she was crying. Emily leaned forward, hanging on every word.
Mom was crying? Why?
Her team had lost 6 months of work in a server crash. The backup systems had failed, and she was trying desperately to recover what she could. I wasn't supposed to talk to employees during my rounds, but... I smiled at the memory. I brought her a cup of terrible vending machine coffee and told her about how I lost everything once too, when I had dropped out of school. But I said sometimes losing everything forces you to build something better from scratch.
Mom always said you were secretly wise,
Emily giggled. Well, your mom surprised me. Instead of dismissing the security guard's advice, she asked me to tell her more. We talked until sunrise, about life, loss, starting over. 2 weeks later, she had not only rebuilt her project but improved it, and she insisted on thanking me for dinner at a certain Italian restaurant. I gestured around our modest apartment. Some people, like Christine, never understood how Sarah could choose this life. A high school dropout, a small apartment, simple pleasures, but your mom saw something different. She said true wealth isn't about fancy suits or expensive restaurants. It's about having the courage to choose your own path and the wisdom to appreciate where it leads you. Emily was quiet for a moment, processing the story. Then she asked,
Did Mom ever regret it? Choosing us over becoming CEO?
I pulled her close, remembering Sarah's last days in the hospital. Even then, she'd been more concerned about us than herself. Your mom's exact words were, how could I regret choosing love? That's the best investment I ever made. Emily snuggled closer.
Tell me more about Mom, please.
And so I did, long into the evening, sharing stories of Sarah's brilliant mind and even more brilliant heart. How she taught herself to code on a secondhand computer. How she mentored younger developers, especially those who didn't fit the traditional mold. How she faced her illness with the same determination she brought to every challenge. The stars appeared outside our window as we talked, just like the night before. But this time, they seemed to twinkle with Sarah's own gentle wisdom. That success isn't measured by titles or bank accounts, but by the lives you touch and the love you share. The next morning, I found myself staring at Mr. Chen's business card while making Emily's lunch. The edges were already worn from how many times I turned it over in my hands. Sarah had always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. Maybe it was time to take another leap.
You're doing that again,
Emily said, appearing beside me in her school uniform.
The thing where you're thinking so hard you forget about breakfast.
I quickly flipped a slightly burnt pancake. Sorry, princess. Just thinking about some changes we might make. Emily hopped onto her usual kitchen stool, her legs swinging.
Is this about Mr. Chen's offer? Mom always said you were the best coder she knew.
I nearly dropped the spatula. She said what?
Uh-huh. She used to help me read your practice code when I couldn't sleep. She said you had, what was the word? An elegant mind, that you saw patterns others missed.
My throat tightened. Even now, Sarah was still surprising me, still pushing me forward.
I've been thinking,
Emily continued, carefully cutting her pancake into precise squares.
Maybe we could use Mom's old office for your coding. I mean, if you want to practice for the job interview.
I hadn't stepped foot in that room since Sarah passed. It still held her presence, her books, her notes, the worn wooden desk where she taught me my first lines of code. But looking at Emily now, seeing Sarah's determination in her eyes, I knew it was time. You know what? That's exactly what we're going to do. The next few weeks passed in a blur of late nights and coffee-fueled coding sessions. Emily would often do her homework in Sarah's office while I practiced, sometimes asking questions about the code on my screen. It felt right, having her there, like Sarah's spirit was watching over us both. The morning of my interview at Chen Technologies, I found a note tucked into my jacket pocket. In Emily's careful handwriting, it read, "Dad, Mom always said courage isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared and doing it anyway. You got this. Love, M." I read it 3 times before entering the sleek glass building. The interview was grueling. 6 hours of coding challenges and technical questions. But with each problem, I heard Sarah's voice in my head. "Break it down. Find the pattern. Trust your instincts." When I finally met with Mr. Chen in his corner office, he was reviewing my results with an unreadable expression.
You know,
He said finally.
Sarah once told me that traditional credentials don't measure what really matters in this industry. Creativity, perseverance, the ability to see solutions where others see obstacles.
He set down the paper and smiled.
She was right, as usual.
I started the following Monday. That evening, Emily and I had dinner at our usual spot, a small diner where I used to work the morning shift. As we shared a plate of fries, Emily asked, "Dad, do you think Mom would be proud of us?" I thought about how far we'd come, about how the strength I found in my daughter's unwavering faith, about the legacy of love and determination Sarah had left us. She always was proud of us, Em, and wherever she is now, I know she still is. Later that night, I sat in Sarah's office, now our office, looking at old photos. One caught my eye. Sarah and me at Bella Luna, the night I finally saved enough for a ring. She was laughing at something I said, her face radiant with joy. My first week at Chen Technologies was a whirlwind of new faces and challenges, but what struck me most was how many of the senior developers knew Sarah. They shared stories during lunch breaks, how she stayed late until to help them debug their code, how she fought for their ideas in meetings, how she changed the company's culture. "Your wife revolutionized our approach to mentorship," my team lead Maya told me one afternoon. "She believed everyone deserved a chance to prove themselves. That's why we started our coding bootcamp scholarship program." I hadn't known about that. Sarah had never mentioned it, just like she never bragged about any of her accomplishments. That was just her way, quietly making the world better, one person at a time. Emily took to visiting me at the office after school, claiming the small couch in my workspace as her homework spot. I'd often catch her watching the developers with curious eyes, especially during our debug sessions. One Friday afternoon, as we were wrestling with a particularly stubborn piece of code, Emily piped up from her couch. "Have you tried checking the loop condition? Mom always said off by 1 errors are sneaky." The room fell silent, and Maya started laughing. "She's definitely Sarah's daughter," she said. And sure enough, Emily has spotted the bug. That evening, Emily asked for her own laptop. "For coding practice," she explained seriously. "Mom's books are teaching me a lot, but I want to try things myself." We set it up in the office right next to mine. Sometimes late at night, I'd hear the soft click of her keyboard mixing of mine, and my heart would swell with bittersweet joy. Sarah would have loved this, our daughter finding her own path, her own passion. The changes in our lives weren't just professional. Emily started holding her head higher at school, proudly telling her teachers that her dad was a developer at Chen Technologies. And I found myself standing taller too, no longer carrying the weight of others' judgment. One evening, and about 3 months after starting at Chen, I found Emily in Sarah's office crying over one of her mother's old notebooks. "I found her coding diary," she sniffled as I sat beside her. "Look at this entry. Today I watched T solve a recursion problem. His mind works differently than anyone I've ever met. He sees the elegant solution while others are still trying to brute force it. I wish he could see himself through my eyes." I pulled Emily close, letting her tears soak into my shirt. "I miss her so much, Dad." "Me too, Princess. Every single day." I stroked her hair, so like Sarah's. But you know what? She left us something amazing. Not just her love, but her way of seeing the world, of seeing the potential in people, of fighting for what's right. Emily wiped her eyes, looking up at me. "Like standing up to bullies?" I smiled, remembering the restaurant incident that had started all these changes. Exactly like that. Well, maybe with a little less getting people fired next time. She giggled, a sound so like her mother's it made my heart skip. "No promises." That night, after Emily had gone to bed, I sat at Sarah's desk, our desk now, and opened my own coding journal. "Dear Sarah," I wrote, "you always said that love was the best investment. You were right, as usual. Our daughter is growing to someone amazing, carrying your spirit, your brilliance, your compassion. I'm finally becoming the person you always saw in me. Thank you for showing us the way." Outside, the stars twinkled just like they had that night at Bella Luna, when a kind security guard offered coffee and hope to a crying programmer. Some might call it chance or fate, but I knew better. It was love, pure and simple, that had guided us then, and love that would guide us forward. 6 months into my time at Chen Technologies, Mr. Chen called me into his office.
Thomas, we're starting a new initiative, coding education for underprivileged youth. Given your unique background and Sarah's legacy, I'd like you to lead it.
The project consumed my evenings, but Emily was right there with me, curled up on the office couch of her laptop, occasionally offering suggestions that were eerily reminiscent of her mother's insight. One night, as I was drafting the curriculum, Emily spoke up. "Dad, I think I found something in Mom's old files." She brought over her laptop, showing me a folder labeled Future Coders. Inside were detailed lesson plans, teaching materials, and notes about making programming accessible to everyone. "She was planning this all along," I whispered, recognizing Sarah's meticulous organization. "She wanted to create opportunities for people like me." Emily nodded, her eyes bright. "Can we use it for your program?" And so Sarah's dream took shape through our hands. We launched a program on what would have been her birthday, naming it Sarah's Ladder, a stepping stone for those who needed one. The first class was held in our company's main conference room. 20 students, each with their own story of obstacles overcome, sat nervously at their computers. I thought of my own journey, from high school dropout to security guard to developer, and smiled. "Welcome," I began. The program built on the belief that everyone deserves a chance to reach their potential. My wife Sarah believed that. I believe it. And now we're here to help you believe it too. Emily, who insisted on being there, sat in the back row with her own laptop open. Throughout the lesson, I caught glimpses of her helping other students, showing the same patience and enthusiasm Sarah had always shown with new learners. Months passed and our first cohort graduated. Mr. Chen hosted a celebration at none other than Bala Luna. As I watched our graduates receive their certificates, I felt Sarah's presence stronger than ever. "You know what's funny, Dad?" Emily said as we walked home that night. "Remember when that mean lady said we lived in different worlds? Parallel lines that never cross?" I nodded, remembering Christine's cruel words. Emily grinned. "Well, Mom always said the best code creates connections. Look how many lives we connected through her program." I stopped walking and pulled her into a hug, marveling at her wisdom. At 9 years old, she understood what had taken me years to learn, that our greatest achievements aren't measured in dollars or titles, but in the bridges we build for others. That night, I dreamed of Sarah. We were back at Bella Luna on that first night when I brought her coffee. But this time, she showed me a vision of the future. Emily teaching her own coding class, our graduates building amazing things. A chain reaction of opportunity and hope spreading outward like ripples in a pond. I woke up with tears on my face but a smile in my heart. The path I'd chosen, or perhaps the path that had chosen me, had led to something far greater than personal success. It had led to a legacy of love, learning, and possibility. Emily was right. In coding, as in life, the most beautiful solutions are the ones that create connections, that transform parallel lines into intersecting paths of possibility. And through Sarah's Ladder, we were doing exactly that. Not just changing lives, but weaving them together into something stronger and more beautiful than any single thread could be alone.